China's children are disappearing, and I mean literally. This kindergarten in Henan, China used to teach 280 kids. Now, it's a nursing home where children once did arts and crafts. Now retirees are folding origami to stave off dementia. This isn't a one-off case. Across China, 20,000 kindergartens have shut down in just the last 2 years. There simply aren't enough children anymore. And this is just the opening chapter of the biggest demographic crisis in history. You might have seen these headlines: China is collapsing. China will grow old before it gets rich. Well, the crisis is real. But here's the twist. The truth is way messier than the headlines make it seem. So this is a population pyramid. It basically shows how many people in a country are in each age group. Back in 1980, China's pyramid looked like this. White at the bottom, full of young workers. That's exactly what you want for economic growth. More people building the economy, fewer elderly to support. But now, the pyramid has become more like a vase. Too few young people and way too many aging parents. And it's getting worse. China's fertility rate has dropped to just 1, meaning each woman is expected to have just 1 child on average. That's even lower than Japan, which has been in crisis since forever, and nowhere near the 2.1 that experts say you need just to sustain your population. Not to mention, the average Chinese citizen is still 3 times poorer than your Japanese counterpart. Well, here's the truth. Wars can be won. Economies can always grow again. But people always grow older. It's inevitable. In a way, demographics is destiny. And right now, the destiny is looking pretty bleak for China. But here's where it gets interesting. China's leaders know that this is a country's biggest existential threat, and they're going all in to stop it. For one thing, they're literally building more robots every year than the rest of the world combined. So is China actually on the brink of collapse? Or could it become the first country in history to beat these demographics? Well, let's find out. But wait, I need to back up here. Because to understand whether China can escape this trap, we first need to know how they got into it. The roots of this crisis aren't the usual stuff. High living costs, stressful jobs, women prioritizing careers like you see in most developed countries. Don't get me wrong, China's facing all those issues right now as it continues developing. But what makes China unique is that their demographic cliff was artificially created by its government in the most extreme social experiment in history, the one-child policy. In 1979, China's government thought that its population was growing way too fast. It had gone from 540 million in 1949 to almost 1 billion in just 30 years. They feared that this crazy growth would lead to starvation, environmental problems, and economic collapse. Remember, this was a time where China was desperately poor. Per capita GDP was less than $200, 60 times lower than today. Their thinking was simple. Less people meant more resources per person. They even had a slogan: to get rich, have fewer children. So they rolled out the one-child policy, which, as its name says, meant that every couple can have only 1 child. And China implemented this policy with a level of insane and brutal control that's hard to even imagine. Take this case from 2012. I'm warning you, the details are really gory and terrifying. A 23-year-old woman named Feng Jianmei was 7 months pregnant with her second child when officials kidnapped her, covered her head with a pillowcase, and dragged her to a hospital. Why? Because she couldn't pay a $6,300 fine for having a second baby. They held her down with 5 men, injected chemicals directly into her baby's head, and forced her to deliver her dead child. Then they placed the body next to her on the bed. Images of this went viral on Chinese social media, causing massive outrage. This wasn't an isolated case, by the way. The government created an army of over 500,000 family planning officials who will literally track women's menstrual cycles, perform forced abortions, and impose crushing fines on families who dared to have a second child. So, the one-child policy stayed in place for 36 years till 2015. Understandably, most parents followed it. And now, because of it, Chinese society is facing what is called the 4-to-1 problem, which basically means one child is now responsible for supporting 2 parents and 4 grandparents. Imagine being a 30-something-year-old office worker in Shanghai with retired parents. On top of a stressful job, you're paying for medications, covering doctor visits, and caring for grandparents too. Worrying about how your single salary can support everything. But remember, your partner also has their own 4-2-1 pyramid, and you both are still expected to save enough to buy your house, start your own family. I mean, that's a lot of stress. Multiply this by hundreds of millions of families, and you see how this whole dynamic is completely changing Chinese society. In the year 2000, retired seniors made up 7% of China. Today, it's nearly 15%. By 2050, a third of the country will be retired. The support ratio, which is number of workers per retiree, has dropped from 7.4 in 1980 to just 2.8 today. And it's still dropping fast. It gets worse. Because of the traditional preference for sons in Chinese culture, the one-child policy led to a wave of sex-selective abortions. Parents who could only have one child often made sure it was a boy. The result? China now has 35 million more men than women. That's more than the entire population of Australia of extra men. These extra men can't find partners, start families, or have kids, which pushes birth rates even lower. Meanwhile, China's working age population peaked back in 2011 and has been shrinking ever since. They're losing millions of workers every year. But we all know China is the world's factory. Well, that economic miracle was powered by an endless supply of young workers moving from rural areas to cities. That advantage is now eroding. And all this is happening when China is still technically a middle-income country. It's kinda true that China is getting old before it gets rich. Japan and Korea face similar aging problems, but they were already wealthy countries when it hit them. Looking at the numbers, when Japan's population started to decline in 2008, its GDP per person was about $47,500. China's was just $21,000, less than half. So, this is China's demographic trap in a nutshell. An aging population with too few young people to support them, a massive gender imbalance, and a shrinking workforce. A combination that no major economy has ever faced at this scale. But here's where it gets interesting. China's government know that they have created this problem and they're throwing everything they have at solving it. After China ended the one-child policy in 2015, they changed it to the two-child policy, and then in 2021 to a three-child policy. But guess what? It didn't work. Birth rates kept dropping.
现在确实就是生一胎的人都挺少，然后你让他们去生3胎，就确实是挺难做的一件事。
现在就看得出来，二胎大家都不愿意生，都不要说二胎了，一胎都不愿意生。
Turns out, once you change how people think about family size and make raising kids insanely expensive, you can't just flip a switch and expect a baby boom. Okay, too fast. Let's unpack this first. Simply put, the cost of starting a family in China today is insane. Let's start with housing. In places like Beijing and Shanghai, for a young couple on average salaries looking at a basic 800 square foot apartment, that will take 25 years of saving every cent they earn. That's insane. For comparison, even in expensive US cities like San Francisco, it's about 10 times the annual average salary. Then there's education. Chinese parents spend a fortune on tutoring, cram schools, and extracurricular activities just to give their kids a fighting chance in the ultra-competitive system. We're talking about the average family blowing 17% of their entire income just on education costs. And if you're poorer, the percentage is around 57%. It's totally insane.
那么一年的成本可能是在数万块吧，然后等到再大一点，然后有更多的考试啊，或者竞赛啊，或者说课外班，然后一年的 cost 可能是在10万到20万之间。如果要养一个孩子的话，几百万。
And third, there's also the workplace discrimination. For women, having children often means career suicide. Employers view mothers as time bombs who will take extended leave. Many women face the impossible choice between starting a family or having a career. And increasingly, they're choosing their careers. Here's the ironic twist. This is actually an unintended consequence of the one-child policy. The policy accidentally liberated millions of Chinese women from their traditional roles as caretakers at home. With only one child to care for instead of many, parents with only their one daughter put all their hopes, resources, and expectations into her. Expectations that traditionally would have been placed on sons. Suddenly, families were investing in their daughters' education and careers like never before. China now has one of the highest female workforce participation rates in the world, with women driving huge parts of the economy. To be clear, I'm all for women choosing whatever path they want. I'm just explaining what happened. The same policy that crushed reproductive freedom actually increased economic freedom for women. But now, these educated, career-focused women are looking at the insane cost and career penalties of having even one kid and saying, no thanks. The government basically created a generation of women who prioritize careers over motherhood, and they can't put that genie back in the bottle. So think about it, insane cost of living, crazy education expenses, and career penalties for having children. All of these issues on top of supporting your 6 parents and grandparents, no wonder nobody can afford to have kids. The government is trying birth subsidies, tax breaks for families with children, extended maternity leave, subsidized childcare, even matchmaking services for single people. But it's like trying to stop a flood with a few sandbags. When the government announced a 3-child policy, the social media reaction was brutal. One viral post captured the overwhelming pressure perfectly. Looking after 4 elderly parents, 3 young children, and continuing to work while facing delayed retirement, the 3-child policy is here, and it's terrifying. So, China's government is learning a hard lesson here. Once you've created a society where having kids seems impossible, no amount of policy changes will fix it overnight. And when looking at these demographic numbers in isolation, the future looks bleak for China. Every empty kindergarten classroom that gets converted into a nursing home tells the same story. China's past social engineering created a demographic crisis that policy alone can't fix. But here's where the story flips, and it's the one thing those China clickbait collapse videos never tell you. Before we go there, if you're enjoying this so far, please hit the like button. It really helps my small channel get better reach. And also subscribe to my channel where I explore more stories like this about the rise of Asia. Okay, so China's demographic crisis looks pretty bad. Empty kindergartens, plummeting birth rates, failed government policies. Sounds like they're totally screwed, right? So I was researching on this a little and I found out that it's not completely doom and gloom yet. There's something wild that almost everyone misses when they talk about China running out of people. I mean, there's literally an industry of YouTubers making China collapse videos. The algorithm knows that these videos get clicks. I watch plenty of them myself, but they rarely give China a fighting chance. Well, I want to. Will China collapse because of this crisis, meaning that they go downhill and never get back up? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But this crazy fact remains. China still has 708 million people under the age of 40. That's more than the entire Western world combined. When we look at the pipeline of future workers, that's kids aged around 5 to 15 right now, China still has around 180 million of them. Sure, that's fewer than before, but it's still an absolutely massive workforce in the making. Shout out to the economist Noah Smith who wrote about this, by the way. He calls this China's baby bulge. This massive group of people who were born before the effects of the one-child policy became really serious. Essentially, it's China's last hurrah before that curse of the one child fully sets in forever. And if we talk about the dependency ratio, there's a number of workers supporting each elderly person. China won't hit Japan's current crisis levels until around the year 2050. That gives them about 25 years of breathing room. And actually, they're trying to extend their breathing room. China's government increased the retirement age in January 2025 from 60 for men and 50 for women to 63 and 55. To be honest, I think the previous retirement ages were actually relatively low compared to many other countries. This will help buy even more time for the country to try to find solutions. The good thing about increasing the retirement age is that your most experienced people are staying in the workforce for longer, and you reduce the burden on public finances because you give less pensions. Plus, there's another factor working in China's favor. Until at least 2035, China's labor force is only expected to shrink in rural areas. Urban areas, which are way more productive, will still see workforce growth as people continue moving from the countryside to the cities. So yeah, China's demographic crisis is definitely real, but the timeline is not the cliff they are about to fall off tomorrow, like many sensational headlines predict. It's more like a long, gradual slope. But here's the thing about demographic time bombs. Once the fuse is lit, you can't put it out. You can only prepare for the explosion. China's leadership knows exactly when their demographic bomb will detonate, around 2050. That gives them a few generations to completely transform their economy and society. The countdown has already started. So what are they doing with this time? Are they just hoping things magically get better? Nope. China is going all in trying to replace their missing workers with robots, AI, and tech. It is carrying out the biggest automation revolution we've ever seen. In 2023, China installed over 276,000 industrial robots, which is 51% of all robots installed worldwide, more than the rest of the world combined. Their robot density, that's just how many robots they have per 10,000 workers, has exploded to 470 in 2023. That's third place in the whole world, which is just insane considering their population size. Currently, they have more robots per worker than even manufacturing powerhouses like Germany and Japan, and they are not slowing down. In 2024, China produced around 560 industrial robots. That's 17 times more than what they were making back in 2015. This massive ramp-up was part of their Made in China 2025 plan, which aims to have 70% of critical technologies produced domestically. This list includes electric vehicles, AI, etc., and includes robotics. We're talking about an automation market expected to reach nearly $74 billion by 2032. In a way, this demographic crisis is accelerating China's move up the value chain, from making cheap toys and clothes to making high-tech robots and green technology. Their EV production jumped 34% in 2024 alone. They are also the world leader in solar energy. But stepping back from all these impressive numbers, what we are really watching is a race. Can robots and AI and tech fill the gap left by missing workers fast enough? And even if they can, there's another huge question. Can China even distribute their wealth well enough to take care of its aging population? Regardless, it's a lot of headache to go through because of their enormous mistake 46 years ago. Here's the scoreboard. Every new robot is a point for tech. Every kindergarten that shuts down, a point for demographics. So here's the trillion-dollar question. Can technology actually beat demographics? Because if it can't, China's economic peak may already be behind it, just like Japan. I mean, let's be real. No country has ever fully solved their population problems with just technology. In fact, no country has ever solved their population problems ever. Wait, let me think. Yeah, I think that's true. Well, France tried paying people to have more kids. Didn't really work. My home country, Singapore, has thrown billions of dollars at the problem with tax rebates and subsidies. It still has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. The only way we're kind of fighting it successfully is through immigration. But something tells me that isn't going to be China's way out. Japan and Korea have been dealing with aging populations for decades and haven't found a magic solution. Despite being tech powerhouses, both countries have seen their economic growth slow significantly as their populations age. China is literally attempting something that's never been done before. So why might China succeed where the others have failed? First off, they're massive. The insane size of China's economy gives them resources that smaller countries just don't have. Second, being a single-party government, they can plan for the long term. Compared to democracies, they have to focus on the next election. Third, unlike Japan, which was already highly developed when its population began declining, China still has room for productivity growth through continued urbanization and technological catch-up. But there are also serious challenges that technology can't easily solve. For one, not all jobs can be done by robots. By 2035, China will have over 400 million people aged 60 and above. And I don't think you can automate taking care of the elderly that easily. There's also a huge impact on older and less skilled workers with this automation boom, who are being forced into early retirement, further decreasing the working population. And the human element can't be ignored. All the robots in the world can't replace the care and support that families traditionally provide in Chinese society. Remember the 4-2-1 problem we talked about earlier? I mean, robots can't take elderly relatives to doctor appointments or provide emotional support. Anyways, the historical lesson is clear. No country has ever fully reversed population decline once it sets in. The question isn't whether China's population will shrink. It will continue to 100%. The real question is whether they can manage this demographic cliff without the economy tanking. This isn't likely to be the dramatic Hollywood-style collapse you see predicted in clickbait YouTube videos. It's about whether China can maintain enough growth to keep improving living standards, support hundreds of millions of elderly people, and of course, from the government's viewpoint, avoid social instability. Do you think they can do it? I'm super curious what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments. This demographic battle and technological gamble will reshape everything from global trade geopolitical power to the price you pay for your phones and clothes. Chinese factories are already moving to countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Nigeria, where labor is younger and cheaper. If China succeeds, they'll be the shining example that the rest of the world will follow as global birth rates continue to fall. If they fail and become something like a worse off Japan, then it just proves what I said in the beginning, and that is, demographics is destiny. China's government messed up their demographic future with the one-child policy, but the ones paying the price are now and always its people. And this is just the beginning. China's youth are facing a whole truckload of issues. Crushed by this demographic burden and a brutal job market, an entire generation is finding hard to keep afloat. If you want to learn more about that, click here. See you in the next one. Peace.